Okay, Minicam, we have bars. Give us picture as quickly as you can.
Video camera, whatever you can do.
Hurry up. Come on, let's go. We're on the air live.
About 3 days before we were going to shoot, we received a present. I thought it was like a present for to begin shooting. And I opened the bow and opened it up, and inside was a comb and a pair of scissors, and a little note from the head of the studio saying, "I trust you know what to do with this." And I had a full beard and long hair, and they wanted me to shave my beard. And I didn't think it was really appropriate. I sort of liked the radical quality of my character, and he was supposed to have that sense of being a radical documentary filmmaker who's sort of filling in, working for a news station. And it sort of helped to kind of create the conflict between my character and Jane's, so I ignored it.
It's just all bullshit. Don't kick me under the table. I'm not going to shut up.
There had never been a film on nuclear power. There was quite a bit of controversy over the issue at the time, and we even began to film this movie under a different name. It wasn't called The China Syndrome, partly because, not that the general public would know, but anybody involved in the nuclear industry, especially nuclear engineers, would know the term China Syndrome, and that might affect our ability to shoot this movie. I believe we used the title Power. It was either Power or Eyewitness, and we used one or the other in the making of this movie.
The huge dome that you see behind me is called the containment.
What we had to do was shoot in a lot of different locations and use bits and pieces of locations which would be combined in the editing along with maybe matte paintings or miniatures and things like that to create the illusion, particularly inside and outside the nuclear power plant and the immediate surroundings. We were not allowed to shoot in an actual nuclear power plant, and we had to build a control room set, a 2-story set on a soundstage. We had Richard Edlund shooting our miniatures, who would go on to do Raiders and Star Wars, and he's working today as a visual effects supervisor.
Go.
Come on, camera 2. We need to clear bars.
Come on, this is only 40 seconds long. Let's hustle up.
It was one of the films, along with a movie called Network, that were some of the first films to kind of bring to the feature film arena the world of television behind the scenes. How is television made, particularly how is television news made, and how is it presented, and how does that relate to real events that are happening in the world? How is it filtered? How is it influenced? And that certainly was, thematically what we were going for. And there's one of the unsung heroes of this production. It was a girl named Doe Mayer who had to compile all of the different news stories that appear. Always in the background, there's TV monitors going on with various stories on the set, commercials, things like that. All of that had to be scripted and cut together. So that, along with our production designer, George Jenkins, who is a master production designer, we used every photographic and visual effects trick in the book at that time in this movie.
Jimmy Bridges, our director, insisted and wanted George Jenkins as his production designer. Now, George had just recently won an Academy Award for All the President's Men, and where he had created a whole newsroom and all of that, and was perceived and was a big-time production designer, and certainly not within our budget range. So we had a pretty healthy debate about George, but in the end, those are one of those areas about what makes a director secure and comfortable. And I'm so glad that we got him.
And I think that Michael makes a good point when he says that although it cost more money than we had originally intended, because it was essentially a low-budget film, it was well worth it in this instance. It was a brilliant set.
Because of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which I had shot in Oregon, we were able to go up to the Trojan nuclear power plant outside of Portland, and they gave us a complete tour of the facility and allowed George to take a whole lot of photographs of the control rooms. It wasn't that easy to see the control rooms of nuclear power plants. We didn't tell him exactly what we were up to, up there. We told him there would be some debate, but through taking all those photographs, George then was able to create the set piece, which was the control room of our plant.
Trying to see if you can find out where that goddamn water's coming.
There was something very real about being up above in the gallery and looking through the glass down into the control room and watching them freaking out.
Water, Barney, give me some water! God damn it!
It was weird as an actress, just as it was extraordinary for a television person to be in that kind of a situation. And it was, you know, being behind glass, you couldn't actually communicate, but you could watch and you could read body language and you could see that something really amazing was going on, and it was fun to do that.
We built the control room in Gower Studios, and then using other types of energy power plants, there's a utility company here in Los Angeles, and also using some really early matte paintings of creating domes on the outside in strategic places, we're pretty credibly able to make the audience believe that they were actually in a nuclear power plant. But even on the set, when you have that feeling of the vibrations and all that, that was just the old thing of shaking the camera.
You know, this was just a group of very talented people from production design, photography, even the costumes, and it all seemed to just somehow tie together. A lot of the responsibility for the angles and holding back on the revealing of the control room, for instance, of the nuclear power plant till later was very consciously Jim Bridges, our director. But Jim Crabe, our director of photography, who'd done Rocky, who was a kind of cinematographer who was very malleable to the story he was telling. In other words, he didn't have a signature style that was imposed on the movie. He found the style that the movie suggested.
Jimmy Craig was the most entertaining, wonderful, terrific guy on the face of the earth. Jimmy had a double life. He was one, a magician. He was the great Sylvester, and he used to appear at the Magic Castle here in Hollywood with a wonderful magic act. And Jimmy began to do very well as a director of photography, and he and Jim wanted to work together.
And he was able to find in a story like The China Syndrome, where you have a lot of video and television and monitors, along with certainly a recognition that we also had movie stars in this movie. So you had to have a sense of cinema verite, and also that sense of, you know, fast pace and the fast cutting of television and television news, along with making them look good. And that was not an easy balance to reach. Jane, as you may have noticed, had red hair in the movie. That caused Jim Crabe terrible problems on video. Red is the hardest color to show up realistically on a television screen. And we were not only having her show up on a television screen, but we were photographing the television screen on film. So being able to have her red hair, see her in her photographic scenes, and see her on the television monitors with a red that was sort of like the red that you saw in the rest of the picture was one of the great technological feats at the time, and really caused him fits. But I think, you know, he really pulled it off well.
He's already written the marathon piece. He'll have a short sheet for you by the time you get back. How'd it go?
Dump the marathon, Mac. I got the lead story.
Fine. You'll be on about 8 minutes in, right after the first commercial.
I found him extraordinarily sensitively kind. He left actors who were doing okay alone. He was there for you when you needed some help. But he liked what I was doing, and he knew that I had done some research. Of course, I knew Michael so well, but he was still the boss, and you were aware of that. Jane I did not know, and I remember at one point I did something that was wrong, and she turned and she said, Mac would never do that. And she was very nice about it. She just said, Mac would never do that. And I suddenly realized that I had forgotten that I was Mac and I was playing as a friend of Michael's. It was when we were watching a movieola. I was behind him and I leaned forward and put my hand on Michael's shoulder. And she saw and she said, he would never do that, Jimmy. Just, it's wrong. She was sharp and she was right. And I was sorry I had done it and I stopped doing it. She was very smart.
I found it very interesting that there were, in ways, two types of filmmaking in the China Syndrome. And the main part of the picture was movie making. And an audience was coming into theater to sit down in their seats and see a story told as a movie. But then when they got to the hearings, you suddenly felt that you were in a news conference and it was just happening now, and the people were being questioned, and they were answering, and they were looking at each other and so on, and making all sort of connections. And suddenly the film changed its style a little bit, but you were actually at a news conference. And I thought it was a neat idea because I think audiences do that quite easily for you. They carry their belief in the picture, and now they're in a news conference.
To the Atomic Safety and Licensing Board, these are pictures of children we love.
We'd had a lot of experience at hearings. You know, there were a lot of very real issues in California then. A lot of the organizers in the organization that I was part of, the Campaign for Economic Democracy, were part of those hearings. And some of them are in the movie. In fact, a woman who I interview is Hazel Washington, who was our fundraiser and who had used to work for the farm workers. I mean, there were a lot of activists that had been at hearings and who testified in the movie. And it's fun to see it, to see the old faces. You know, if you're an activist and you know what demonstrations really look like, or you know what hearings look like, you hate to go to movies and see it, you know, look like real Hollywood, like, no, it's not the way it goes. So we put a lot of attention into making it real. Well, when we're out there in the scene where the car crashes and the helicopter's landing and I'm running around, I arrive late and I'm running around and I broke my foot. But it was towards the end of the, of the shoot, but I felt like a schmuck, I can tell you that. And then there are all these scenes, I don't know why it didn't happen sooner. I'm running headlong from here to, I'm always running.
We only have 45 minutes.
Vanity! Stupid vanity. I'm like a cripple. God. I mean, I look at my shoes and I'm thinking, am I out of my mind? And I don't know why I needed to wear those kind of shoes. I don't know. Vanity, thy name is woman. Anyway, that's why I broke my foot. No big deal.
There's a chase sequence on a freeway where Jack Lemmon is being followed by he doesn't know who, and there's all kinds of stunt driving that's taking place on a freeway. These days, you have the advantage of building a freeway and having all of the digital effects that are now in the palette of filmmakers to really make that exciting. We had a section of freeway that had just been finished but not yet opened, which we had the use of for one day. And we were just out there with about 50 stunt drivers in stunt cars and having to pull off that sequence in one day in real time. So, I mean, that's the kinds of challenges that people had then.
What did Jack?
Jesus Christ, Jack.
Just get out.
There's really almost two ends to this movie, and there's sort of an interior end and an exterior end. The interior end that was shot both in the gallery above and on the floor of the control room was the set that we built. And one of the things about that set is it was one of the first uses of a computer program to actually control the lights and the switches and the gauges and the sequences of events there. So we tried to make it as close to what would really happen in a scram situation in a nuclear power plant.
Oh, no. No.
No. Oh, my God!
So I think that really helped the actors in terms of the emotion to have as much of their surroundings be just the kinds of things that would happen in an emergency situation like that. I remember the day that we shot the scene where Jack Lemmon gets shot. Even though I've been around sets and movies, certainly around special effects and squibs, I was standing right next to the camera, and when he comes running towards the camera and they shoot him from behind and the squibs go off and he's shot through the chest, I mean, I remember gasping. It was beyond real.
And I'm told we're just about ready to switch back live to Ventana to our second unit.
We don't know what it is.
Which is located just outside there. You see it. You can see a very big crowd outside the plant.
So the exterior part of the end was shot at an actual power plant just south of Los Angeles International Airport. It wasn't a nuclear plant, but in every other way, it was and is a real power plant.
I can remember the very last scene where there's this crush of people outside the plant. And, you know, the PR person representing the company is kind of saying everything's fine, nothing's happened. And then I come running in, and it's very emotional. And I remember we shot it late at night. That's where Bill Brimley said he was a hero. And it was the first time that I had ever experienced a scene being shot that you could go then and look at it on a video. I mean, today, they do that all the time. There's always this little place called, like, Video Village where everyone goes and clusters around the camera so that they can actually see what's being done. I mean, that didn't even exist when I was in the business. And so that was interesting because it was the first time that I could go. We'd shoot the scene. I had to be emotional, but not too emotional because I still was professional. So we'd shoot it, and then I'd run back and look at what I'd just done. So it's, in a way, you're directing yourself, you know, and I would say, no, it's not quite good enough. Let's go do it again. And so we'd go do it again. And I've got that was the last day of shooting. And it was really kind of fun because it was a big, important scene. And we could actually, yeah, we got it. There it is. It's right there. It was fun.
We'll be back with more on the Ventana nuclear power plant takeover by one of its employees right after this.
Roll logo.
KXLA.
Incredible.
The sense of it was then, as it is now, that television has an insatiable appetite. And here was a great story, a drama story that fulfilled our need and fulfilled the need for the airwaves. And the moment it was over, we were doing a commercial on microwaves to keep this animal afloat.
I think on our director, James Bridges' part, he was making all kinds of statements there. People can take from it what they will. I think that essentially what he was trying to say there is that, think about it, this is microwave ovens. Microwave ovens need electricity to run. We have to get our electricity from somewhere. How we're going to do that is really up to us. We've just witnessed one way of generating power, and you see the possible results, but we were trying to raise the questions for the audience to think about where their power comes from and how they want to generate it.
Sharp carousel. It turns the food so you don't have to.
We all sat and looked at the first cut of the movie, and the last 40 minutes, the finale of the picture, the whole shootout, the whole thing was fantastic. So we looked at each other and we said, we got an ending. We got a real ending. And David Rawlins had done a stunning job of kind of editing it all together. We had hired a composer, and in our period we were, putting the music and we're scoring it where we thought it should be scored. And when we came, after doing all the other work, when we came for one of our first mixes, and we laid our music in, what was dramatic became melodramatic. The viscerousness, the vitality, the energy, and also a great sound editor, that all the clicking of the dials and the stuff became much more powerful. And when we laid the music in, it didn't work.
When Jim heard the score, he said, it ruins the reality of the film. The score absolutely ruins the reality. The film has a rhythm, and the film has a sound life. It has a whole life of sound because he was very careful with sound as well as the photography. And so Jim threw off the score.
It's common knowledge, of course, that every movie that has ever been made, they've shot scenes that didn't end up in the ultimate product that is shown on the screen for the general public.
Hey, listen, maybe tomorrow morning we go over the first minute of that printout again, huh? See if we can't find the cause of that damn vibration.
Jack, let sleeping dogs lie.
There's no sleeping dog.
And there was one scene in the China Syndrome that I enjoyed watching them do, and it was eventually cut from the film. It was at a party around a swimming pool, and I believe one of my staff was harassing Jane Fonda.
Well, what were you two doing in there a minute ago? Was he defining your role here at the station? Huh?
What else?
Some bitches always defining somebody's role at the station. Hey, when are you and me gonna get together and do a little role defining of our own, huh?
Cut it out. Stop it.
I got it. You want to play cars?
What?
Cars, you know, honk, honk.
It was a marvelous moment to see that and her stalking off to let him drown if he wants to. But it was a great statement of that, one of the ideas in the picture, that women are moving ahead and should.
When Jack saw the film in New York, Jack was stunned that these scenes had been cut out, which he felt were his favorite scenes.
20 years of boredom, 20 seconds of terror. How's that for an autobiography?
You're home free. You did the right thing.
Oh, yeah, well, I didn't go by the book.
Yeah, well, never mind the book. What you did was right. You caught the event in time.
And so he called Jim and he said he was very disappointed in the editing, very disappointed in the cuts in his performance, and he wanted Jim to know that he wouldn't do any publicity for it and there was no way he would further support the film in this cut. And so Jim felt very bad about it, but that was the cut. And so Jack came around. I mean, totally. The film, it was a great success, and he came around and never mentioned this again.
There was a lot of controversy over the title. I mean, China Syndrome. Nobody knew what China was. This a movie about China? I mean, there was a lot of the studio wanted us to change it.
One of the reasons that we really wanted to use the title, The China Syndrome, is it had a very specific meaning. At that time, probably only nuclear engineers really knew what the meaning was. And we wanted the audience eventually to discover that the China Syndrome had a very specific meaning in nuclear lore.
Oh my God.
Eventually, a very smart man by the name of Mike Shapiro created a teaser trailer for the movie with a tagline,
The China Syndrome. Today, only a handful of people know what it really means. And they're scared.
Everybody keep your station! Everybody keep your station!
Soon, you will know. The China Syndrome.
and that started to create a buzz about what is that? Okay, it's not about China, but what is it? And it started to create interest, which built.
Then we came very close to the China Syndrome.
The what?
If the core is exposed, for whatever reason, the fuel heats beyond core heat tolerance in a matter of minutes. Nothing can stop it. And it melts right down through the bottom of the plant, theoretically, to China.
There was a lot of controversy when the movie opened, and we were attacked very viciously for making this movie, that nuclear power had a fabulous safety record, and coal production had a much worse safety record, and we were being completely irresponsible for this.
I was supposed to do a big talk show with Barbara Walters, and General Electric refused to sponsor it because I was involved with China Syndrome and I was being interviewed by her. Talk about relevancy. And I said often at the time, the film's about greed. Corporate executives not wanting to tell the truth because it would affect the bottom line. It would affect their profits.
When the reviews came out, they didn't dismiss the picture, but they said, well, it's really a very nice thriller. You just have to absent yourself from the idea that it could possibly have happened, an accident like this. And the picture was doing very well on the basis of those reviews, and we had wonderful stars, Michael and Jane and Jack Lemmon and all these good character people, of course. And then suddenly, 3 Mile Island happened.
The disaster happened maybe 2.5 weeks after the movie came out. And when you went and you reviewed the steps at Harrisburg, Pennsylvania and 3 Mile Island, it was staggering how similar they were to the steps that we had recreated in our script. And for me, it was truly an epiphany. It was instrumental in my kind of pursuit of elimination of nuclear weapons and the reduction of nuclear power, having some sense of just how insane it was.
We had some advisors on the film, which were 3 GE engineers who had worked in nuclear power and who were getting calls from people inside the plant telling them what was going on. And as we were getting information, my first fear was that somebody had actually seen the movie and tried to make what happened in the movie happen at the nuclear power plant, and that somehow we were going to be blamed for it in some way, or worse, that somehow we'd created this as some kind of publicity stunt or something for the movie.
People always thought that 3 Mile Island was a big asset for our financial success, when in fact it wasn't. It actually kind of hurt the movie because there was so much news on television that people thought they had seen the movie already before they had.
Bruce and Michael both say that what happened at 3 Mile Island wasn't necessarily good for the movie. I don't agree with them. My experience was, that people were so shocked by what happened at 3 Mile Island, they went to see the movie to try to understand what did happen. I don't think there has ever been an incident of such congruity between real-life tragedy and a film story. It's never happened. So we were a hit before. We were definitely, the expression, we had legs. We became a caterpillar after 3 Mile Island, not just in this country, but all over the world. People wanted to see the China Syndrome.
Jim would never see a film after it was locked, because he always wanted to change it. Oh, I shouldn't have done this, or this should be edited, this should be changed. He would never see the film. And after 3 Mile Island happened, I said to him, because it was a sensation, you have to go see the film with a normal audience. And he said, well, where do you think I should see it? Hollywood. And let's go to the Hollywood Paramount. It was sold out, and we stood in the back of the theater, and he was stunned at the effect that the film was having on the audience. They were screaming at the film and at the executives who were managing it. You bastards! They were screaming because they knew now that it could happen. It changed completely the response of the audience to the film. It wasn't just a thriller anymore. It was a political event.
The film was nominated for 4 Academy Awards: Best Actress for Jane Fonda, Best Actor for Jack Lemmon, Best Screenplay for Jim Bridges and Mike Ray and T.S. Cook, and Best Art Direction, Production Design for George Jenkins, which was a real acknowledgement of how difficult it was to integrate all those different looks for this picture. And it was an acknowledgement by the Academy, and by critics, not for the political statement that it may or may not have made, but for it as a film, as a work of art.
I was very proud of the movie. I was ecstatic that it was extremely commercially successful. I was married to Tom Hayden at the time, and his father was rather conservative and pro-nuclear, as was, I later found out, Ted Turner. And both of them, after seeing the movie, were converted. I mean, Ted Turner attributes his turning against nuclear energy from seeing the China Syndrome.
It's played a crucial part for me in my life because I now work as United Nations messenger of peace in the area of disarmament, focused on elimination of nuclear weapons and reduction of small arms. And a lot of that, my education, came out of the time and my experience of working on the China Syndrome.
I am very happy to be here in Jim's place showing the flag for Jim, because I believe he wouldn't have done this, but I'm very happy to be talking about one of his films, The China Syndrome, because he was very, very proud of it and proud of what he succeeded in being true to with, I don't want to be mushy, but he prayed every day that he would fulfill this task of being up to making a film that was worthy of the subject matter, and he did.